Hi, everyone. My name is Tommy Lee, and I'm the Senior Manager of Recruiting at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher's Los Angeles area offices. I also have the honor and privilege of serving as President of the Los Angeles Area Legal Recruiting Association, or in short, LAALRA. LAALRA is a community of 180 members strong, from 70 law firms to 8 law schools. I'm here today to tell you about the recruiting industry's best kept secret, legal recruiting. And to tell you more throughout this program, we have 5 of the industry's best leaders who have all come from unconventional paths to get to where they are today. I too took an unconventional path, having had been in nonprofit work and leadership for about 17 years. And I can tell you, going into legal recruiting has been the best professional decision of my life. So without further ado, I want to pass it along to our panelists and start with introductions. Caroline?
Hi, I'm Caroline Menez, and I'm the firm-wide director of legal recruiting at Shepherd Mullen, which means that I oversee the hiring and integration of all lawyers at the firm, with the exception of partners. I have been in the legal profession for close to 30 years. I started as an associate at a large California law firm in its New York City office. And after a few years, I came to the realization that I didn't feel fulfilled in practice. And I realized that the thing that kind of gave me the most satisfaction in my job was all my activities around recruiting, because I was on the hiring committee, I was on the summer program planning committee, I was a work coordinator for summer associates, and I really derived a lot of satisfaction and joy from counseling students, going around campuses, interviewing students. And so I decided then that I wanted to shift into legal recruiting. There were a few bumps in the road, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I did do was enter onto the placement side, and I joined Columbia Law School's Career Services Office to counsel law students and to help place them in large law firms. After Columbia, I went to another large New York law firm where I managed corporate paralegals, and then for a short while, the corporate department, before finally landing a job in legal recruiting, where I've been for the last 20 years or so. Thanks.
I'm Brittany Olson. I'm the West Coast Professional Development and Recruiting Manager at Wilkie Farr & Gallagher. I've been in the recruiting industry for a little over 10 years. 6 of those have been in a law firm, and 4 were on the staffing agency side, both in legal recruiting and finance, accounting, and entertainment recruiting. I graduated during college during like the 2008-2009 recession. So were not a lot of job prospects during that time. Really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I actually worked part-time as like an administrative assistant and also a head swim coach of the university that I went to. So I did that. And then I temped for a bit with a legal staffing agency as an admin first. And I actually helped them screen candidates for internal positions, and the regional VP who oversaw that particular branch actually said, she's like, "You're a natural at this. What do you think about recruiting?" and gave me the opportunity, and I got into legal recruiting that way on the staffing agency side. And then that contact actually hired me years later at another staffing agency, and I got to experience more of the attorney recruiting side of things, and then did that for a few years and eventually applied to a law firm because I knew I wanted to work either in a law firm or a company doing the recruiting for them. And I applied and got that job about 6 years ago, and have since moved to another firm where I'm at now. And I'll popcorn that over to Michael.
Thanks, Brittany. I'm Michael Nguyen from Davis Wright Tremaine. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm Director of Talent Acquisition, which means I oversee recruiting, both attorney side and professional staff side at Davis Wright. My background is actually, after my undergrad, I worked in tech in San Francisco. And I did tech-related work for quite a long time. Well, in the late 90s, so during the dot-com boom. And then I was laid off after September 11th. And I then, out of necessity, needed a job. And that's how I got into legal. I worked part-time at the front desk and in human resources for a local bankruptcy boutique and I just stuck around. And eventually that firm got acquired by Winston and Strawn. And that led me down a path that over 2 decades later, I have this accidental career of like I started with law student recruiting and lateral associate and partner recruiting. And that's what's led me here. And part of my motivation is I want to pay it forward and for everyone to understand that this is a great career path that no one tells you about. And so then I will now pass it off to Ramiel.
Sure. My name is Ramiel Coleman. I work at Skadden Arps, and specifically in our Los Angeles office. I work in attorney recruiting and also diversity and inclusion. I've been in the legal space for 3.5 years now, first starting off as a HR coordinator at another firm. I did that for about a year. And then at one point I was looking for a change. And then I spoke with a headhunter at the time who proposed to me the opportunity to work in attorney recruiting. Although she understood that I didn't have the experience, she thought my skills were transferable coming from the HR space. So I've been here about 2.5 years now, and similar to what Michael said, I'm glad to be a part of it. I didn't know it existed, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it. And I will pass it off to
me. I'm the only one who hasn't talked yet. So thank you. Thanks so much, guys. As Michael mentioned, I'm Araby Abaya. I'm the Assistant Director of Employer Outreach at UCLA Law. I've been in this role for the past 8 years. I started out as a litigation attorney at a large firm in New York City. I practiced litigation and white-collar crime, but after a few years, I wanted to change, and I made the somewhat, I think, unusual transition into sales, and I continued along that trajectory for a number of years. In my current role, I focus on creating and strengthening partnerships with potential employers, both large and small, to expand the network of firms that hire from UCLA Law. So my primary goal is to increase the number and quality of job opportunities that are available for our students and graduates. And as you saw, my colleagues all work at large law firms. I work at a school. And one of the things I like about it is that I get to work with students frequently and all year round, and not just during large firm recruiting cycles. That's good for me because I really love working with students. I find it super rewarding to work with them because they're, most are just starting to learn how to navigate the professional world at a pretty challenging and high level. And it's exciting to help contribute to that process and to help in whatever ways I can to enable them to create their professional foundation. Students are also a lot of fun to work with, so that's pretty cool too. I also like the variety of employers that I get to work with. So I get to partner with large employers, like firms that are represented here, firms with hundreds of attorneys, and very small employers like solo practitioners. And because their needs and hiring approaches differ quite greatly, they pose their own challenges and require different strategies. So that's one of the challenges and kind of things that I like to tackle in my job. And finally, I love working on a university campus. I mean, the atmosphere and vibe is awesome. So those are some of the things that stand out to me. But I want to turn to Caroline and Michael. You're both directors at 2 pretty awesome established firms. What do you guys look for when hiring talent into your departments?
Caroline?
Really quickly, I'm just going to say that there is a note in the Q&A session that the chat doesn't work. So for people who do have questions, please pop it into the Q&A section. Excuse me.
I test ran it, and I believe it works now. And so
Okay.
should they need to use the chat for any reason, they should be able to use it now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was unnecessary.
No, thank you. That's if we weren't for Genesis awesomeness, we would need to transition to that. So thank you, Janice. Go.
I can start. I think, there's a lot of things that we look for, but at heart, what we do is all about people and making connections. So one of the first things I look at is personality and approachability. we need to make connections with our lawyers, with our candidates. And without that, you have to like people, I think, in this job. That's just because you like people doesn't mean you should do this job. But I think it is a little bit of a requirement because you are going to be dealing with people all day long, whether it's lawyers, whether it's other business services professionals at your firm, or obviously students, people at the law school. So that's kind of the first thing I look at. That's kind of the barrier. And then after that, I'm looking for things like enthusiasm, team mentality. I don't want to steal all of them, so I'm going to let Michael jump in now.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. I think a lot of what we do in recruiting is that it's marketing and sales. It's just organizational and people marketing. And that ties into what Caroline said about you have to like people and you have to engage with them. And yet a lot of it's educating. And so what I'm looking for in a person who enjoys that, and I want some to like, I like people that are interested in learning about this as a business and that they're curious, that there's a natural curiosity and regular skills, like people that are quick on the uptake. You don't have to come in knowing this kind of stuff and knowing how to do things, but and also having a client service mentality because, and Caroline will understand this because she was a former practicing attorney. Having that service mentality goes a long way. I think some of the most successful people in legal have come from like a hospitality background, especially because they understand that our clients, our internal clients are the attorneys. And I was raised to always like take care of them and always anticipate their needs in advance. I think those are key skills. Caroline, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of smaller things. Attention to detail, having a good work ethic. I think being good with data is really important because lawyers love data. You don't have to be great with numbers because I've been able to be successful without that, but it really does help. And two other things that I think are really important is discretion and good judgment, because there are going to be a lot of things that happen during the course of running a summer program and during recruiting season. And we need to be really mindful of how these things can affect the firm's reputation, how it can affect the people that are involved. And so if you're at all involved in this profession, you will see myriad stories of people getting into trouble. It is not something to gossip about. It's not something to, share with other folks. You need to be discreet. And that's something that I haven't always seen in some of my juniors because it is tempting to gossip. But, if you're going to succeed in this, you do need to have some discretion and good judgment.
But that's one of the perks, and that people come to us in an advice and counsel role too, right? And I think to add just to really quickly, one of the things that I enjoy most about this job is that you understand I'm so curious about people's motivators and what drives them. And I think that it's just great to because one of the questions I asked when I used to do law student recruiting, I'd be like, how did you choose your law school? Why did you go to law school? I'm always curious about their decision-making process because everyone has a different calculus. And so it's just, you see human behavior. It's just fascinating.
Thank you both for those terrific insights. That's really helpful. I want to turn to Brittany and Ramiel. I know both of you share, in addition to legal recruiting, you both share responsibilities that are adjacent to legal recruiting, professional development and diversity, equity and inclusion. A lot of firms separate these roles into different departments, but can you share how you think they overlap?
Ramiel, do you want to go first and then I can
Sure.
chime in?
Sure, I'll go first. So they overlap quite often, specifically when putting together targeted outreach events and finding out who you want to participate in certain events. So some other examples are internal trainings and education for attorneys who do a fair share of recruiting along with us. But I would say for the most part, it just overlaps when we have intentionality and when we want to, establish groups and student associations in which we want to partner with. It helps to, have knowledge in both fields, especially when seeing who you want to sponsor, for how much, and the events that go along with those sponsorships.
Great. And on the professional development side, I think, there is a lot of overlap and those go hand in hand with recruiting. The professional development side is how we develop and retain the talent that we're hiring. And so it's really important, especially for associates when they come into a law firm, they want to know how their firms are going to help them build their skills throughout their career. And so those are the things that we help do on the professional development side. So those are things like their orientation programming as a summer associate and a first year associate. It's developing that program, making sure that they're being integrated into the law firm with mentorship pairings. And also we're part of the evaluation process, usually at year end and mid year at our firm. And so there's a lot of those pieces that speak to the recruiting side too, because I have to talk to our summer associate candidates and our lateral associate candidates on what we're doing as a firm to help retain that talent. They want to know what programs are available to them. And this was actually a big reason why I wanted to get into a law firm or a company doing the recruiting and seeing what happens after someone is hired. That piece was really missing for me on the agency side. And so I get to see that every single day when we hire new associates. And I get to be part of that process of how they integrate into the firm and how they access the resources that they need to do their jobs.
Well, thanks, Brittany and Ramiel. Caroline, I wanted to bounce back to you. Like me, you started your career in the legal industry as a practicing attorney. Did that experience help you transition into legal recruiting? I imagine it did, and if so, how?
So it did, in that I had never heard of legal recruiting before. I assumed that people are hired, in law firms by HR professionals. So had I not become an associate, I never would have learned about this field. So in that way, it helped. It was actually a hindrance when I started, because at the time, I think there was only one other lawyer who served in this capacity. Just happened to bump into him in Atlanta yesterday. But literally everybody said, you are overqualified and you are underexperienced. So I actually ended up going to Columbia Law School because firms wouldn't hire me. That was then, this is now. I think that people realize that having a JD can be helpful in this role, right? We were once in the shoes of a recruit. We know what it feels like to be recruited, what worked, what didn't. We may have worked in a firm as an associate and know what that perspective is. We know what they want, what might be appealing when a candidate is considering lateraling. And I think maybe the best thing is just kind of that instant credibility you have with partners, with associates, with candidates, because they're like, oh, you get us because, you're one of us, right? Now, helpful, not necessary by any means. It's everything that we do here is not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It can all be learned. You just get a little bit of a head start if you have a JD, because you kind of speak the language.
Thanks, Caroline. That's definitely very helpful. And Michael, you also came from a completely different industry and route. What were some of the challenges and difficulties you faced in this transition? And thinking back to your kind of old you, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, segueing from what Caroline just said, it's like, yeah, when you have practiced as a lawyer, you understand the vocabulary, you understand the jargon and just the protocols in legal. And so for me, I kind of had to observe it. But then I started my career from ground zero. So I was kind of an observing and learning it. And then I was very fortunate that my first manager was really good and took me by the hand and trained me very thoroughly. And so one of the things she made me do was she's like, you're going to read the local daily legal rag every day, and then we'll talk about it. And I was like, that was one of the most helpful things ever. And then to this day, I still, even though we don't have newspapers like we once did, I still read the headlines and I know what's going on at other law firms. It has been a great asset. And so I think that's the other thing is like you're coming into this new industry, so you're going to have all these names thrown at you, and you think a law firm is a law firm is a law firm, but that's not the case. And I see Caroline totally agreeing with me. It's over time as you learn about the different market segments, and you like, and I come from a marketing background, so that kind of gave me a heads up too. Like I understood industries and market segmentation, and then I started piecing together. I figured that out, and so I think to answer your question, like that's the biggest hurdle is understand that this is its own industry, just like anything else. But I also had friends when I was an undergrad who were in accounting and professional services. Like back in the day, it was called Anderson Consulting, or like if you were an undergrad in accounting, you had to get your summer job in that sophomore year, or if you didn't, you were hosed. Somewhere legal kind of worked the same way, so I kind of knew that. I think to answer your question, but if I could go back and any advice I have, it's really about being open-minded. And sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. Because yeah, I said I started from ground zero, and I had people that helped me along the way that trained me and have gotten me where I am today. So just being open-minded, being receptive to it, because you never know where your career is going to lead, and your career is going to go sideways too. It could go different ways. I think that Caroline, how she talked about her career path, it's more like a lattice, right, Caroline? It hasn't been a straight 45-degree trajectory.
Yeah, I call it a jungle gym.
Mm-hmm.
I see that someone asked about how do you get into the recruiting industry after being an attorney. We're going to answer questions at the end, right?
Yeah, that is the plan.
But yeah, I think you do have to be open to taking a step back, and that can be hard sometimes with salaries. Like there are a lot of things to think about, but being open-minded and being open to learning about new things and maybe taking a step you didn't anticipate.
And getting your hands dirty, because what I mean by that is like our job is heavily admin. There's clerical, like even though I'm a director, I do my own, I set my own meetings, I do my own expenses. I don't expect someone to do that for me. And you learn how to, and I think, Caroline, I think you learn how to be a people manager and a leader in this process, right?
Right, thank you.
If I can chime in just really quick, is even coming from a staffing agency side into a law firm, I took that step back myself and started at the coordinator level because I saw the value in what experience I wanted to have and what I wanted to go into. So those steps when you do have to take a step back, are often worth it for what the long-term gain can be. Especially in this industry, there is so much opportunity. And I know Michael and Caroline have already touched on that too.
And Brittany, thanks. That's actually a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you, as somebody that worked in a search firm agency and now at a legal recruiting department of a law firm, what are some of the key differences between these roles? If somebody's trying to figure out one or the other, what positive, negative, how can you help them decide?
Yeah, so there are many similarities, but I know we're talking about the differences. I would say one of the key differences that was probably the bigger learning curve for me was learning the whole law student recruiting cycle. I had no idea what that even looked like coming from the agency side. I really just worked in both the placing legal staff as well as associates. So that was a big learning curve. But again, like Caroline said, it's like you can learn this job. It's really easy. And so just going through that first cycle really helped. And I did a lot of the back end piece of uploading a lot of the candidates, all the administrative stuff to help our recruiting managers during that first OCI that I went through. And that was the best way to learn. I would say the other difference is again, I touched on this before, is being part of that onboarding and integration. Sorry, my light goes off every few minutes if I don't move. But being part of that onboarding and integration once someone is hired, that again, for me is really exciting. And just knowing that I get to be a part of making that person feel welcome and being their go-to resource so that they feel a part of the firm and a part of a new job. Because we all know what it's like to be part of a new job and start a new role and not know anybody. So it's kind of like that first day of school. And so I get to be a part of that, where that really was missing on the agency side. You place somebody, you shake their hand, good luck, let me know how it goes. You might check in with them 60, 90 days down the road to just see how they're doing. But then other than that, you might not talk to them again for a few years when they're ready to make another move. And then I will just touch on one similarity that I think if you are deciding to go between the two, that may be helpful. It's great experience, but Michael touched on this, is like we're in a sales capacity, you know, so on the agency side, the difference is you're selling many different types of firms. You're working with many firms, and so you're able to speak to what that environment is and what that they might be able to offer you in your career. And on the law firm side, we're selling our current firm, where we're at. Why should you choose Wilkie? Why come here? What's exciting about what you want? So that's kind of a similarity there too.
That's helpful, Brittany. Thank you. And terminology, Ramiel, I wanted to turn to you because I think people who are interested in this, in recruiting, sometimes use the terms HR and recruiting interchangeably. You've transitioned from HR into this role, and what would you say are some of the similarities and differences between these roles? How did you use your success in HR to excel in your current role?
Sure. So some of the major differences I saw within the two functions were how often I would interface with attorneys I was servicing and how often I was servicing them versus collaborating with them. In my previous firm, I was working in HR and I handled employee transactions. So essentially that's onboarding and offboarding, any changes in our HRIS system, our HR information system. So promotions, location changes, terminations, things of that nature. So that's much different now in my role in attorney recruiting because I do a fair amount of collaborating with them when it comes to outreach events, and even if you incorporate DE&I, any initiatives that we have internally and externally, I'm always in meetings, I'm speaking with them, and there's more face-to-face than there was in my previous role. In my previous role, I was able to just, get emails and say, hey, this person is changing location. So input it within, the system. And there wouldn't be much face time I would get with attorneys. And I wasn't able to really build as strong as rapport as I am now. So that is one distinct difference between the two departments. But I will say some similarities that were confidential information handling, which also coincides with D&I functions, multitasking, of course, being proactive, coordinating internally and externally. And these are the type of skills that I was able to leverage to help excel in the role. I would also say one distinct difference is, just like Brittany alluded to, just learning the law school schedule. It's much different from any other school side function. And so it took me a full cycle of OCI, diversity program in the winter, in pre-recruiting now that's a thing. So it's a lot of changes, but it's been quite rewarding.
Awesome, Ramiel. Thank you. I want to look at Caroline and Michael. Now, you guys know a thing or two about moving up the ladder. So I wanted to ask you, for those in the audience who are already in the industry, what guidance do you have for how they can have a conversation about a title change or promotion and just kind of moving up in the industry in general?
Caroline, do you want to take it first or do you want me to?
Sure, I'm happy to.
Okay.
I think the best advice I can give is make your boss's life easier, because if you do that, you won't even have to ask. I was promoted to director at my former firm, even though I actually asked her not to promote me. I didn't feel like I was ready, but she relied on me so much and she wanted me in that role. So I'm very grateful to her, I guess, even though I wasn't at the time. But I made her life easier. I made her look good. And because of that, she wanted to bring me along with her.
You're very good at staying still, or you're frozen. It's one of those.
Okay, I'll cover and then I think that what's really important is make the ask.
But if you're doing your job, I'm sorry. Did I freeze?
You were bouncing in and out there, so Michael was taking up the finishing your sentence. We thought you kind of just froze, but is your internet, it seems to be okay now if you want to finish your thought, or?
I was just going to say that I feel like I have had some people talk about wanting a promotion because they were doing their job. And you need to do a little bit more than just do your job in order to get a promotion. You have to deserve it. You have to add value. And so it's just something to think about. Don't just do exactly what you're asked. Think about, why are they asking you to do this? What is the purpose? And then think about, are there other ways that I can contribute toward that purpose? And that to me shows somebody who really cares and is actually taking ownership. And those are things to me that signal, okay, this person is ready for that next step.
So, and I think, like I was saying, when make the ask and make it be known that you want to be promoted. But then I think you have to be aware, hey, if I want this promotion, am I qualified? Am I doing everything for that next title? Not because I put in my time and, oh, I deserve to be promoted. No, that's not right. Because like I think one of the dilemmas we have, just like in any other industry, like there are people that are over promoted because people think, oh, I just need to just promote them because they've been doing this for so long. Because I think one of the things that we're learning in legal is doing better. Like I'm very proud to be at the firm I am because we are very conscious of developing people in their people manager skills. That like if you want to be a manager at my firm, then okay, you have to meet certain requirements. Like you have to do certain things to be a manager. Like I call it the manager contract. Like just because you've worked for a long time does not mean that you should be a manager. Like you need to be willing to do certain things to be a manager. And then I think that in terms of moving up in the industry, I think this is something that makes us, I think, unique because one of my team members used to work in tech, and she's been with us for almost 2 years, and she says she knows that there's much more community here in legal. And Caroline, you and I have been doing it for a long time, and Brittany, you've gone on the other side. Like in my over 20 years, they're the same people that I know that have helped my career along. And I think that is so different than other industries. And like Tommy talked about LAALRA, like I've been active in LAALRA for a number of years. And even though I live in San Francisco, and I know that the people in the LA community have been a great help to advancing me. And I think that is what makes us a little bit unique. And I'm very grateful for it.
Great. Oh, were you going to say something, Caroline? Nope, because you're not moving because you're frozen. So I'm gonna, I wanted to ask, I'm gonna come back to you, Caroline, but before, just kind of to everybody, what should individuals expect when,
Did I freeze again?
Yeah, you did. Perfect. I'm glad you unfroze now because I do have a question I want to ask of you. We've talked a lot about transferable skills, and we've talked about, a number of different industries. Can you think of any transferable skills that we haven't mentioned that one might develop in other industries? And what skills are better suited towards a career in law school recruiting versus lateral recruiting or PD and DEI?
Can I just go back really quickly to the previous question, because I want to give kind of practical advice. So when you're going into a meeting with your boss to ask for a promotion, I think you need to make sure that you're arming that person with information to advocate for you. So, I always tell everyone on my team, like, hey, when you get a nice email, forward it to me, because I have a file where I keep all of these emails. And then when I'm writing their evals, I'm able to put in there, hey, this partner said this partner said that, did a great job on this, but you're giving me the information I need so that I can make a compelling case for a promotion. So save all those emails, forward them to me, keep track of the projects that you've taken on. I think some firms have, I think their self-evaluations. Take advantage of that and make sure that there is a list of all the things that you volunteered to take on outside of what your normal duties are. I think those are things that can really help you to advance. So back to transferable skills. Well, Michael stole it because hospitality was going to be what I chose to say. Client service is everything, but that can be learned in so many different arenas, right? Sales. We talked about how this is really a job about sales. And one of my favorite people on my team, she credits her job at the Gap, working there for 4 years, for her success because she dealt with irate customers. People that were very difficult, having to have like long lines waiting in front of her, but not letting it rattle her. And and so those are skills that are really helpful because during recruiting season, unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, you should be prepared.
She's great at keeping us on the edge. Like, I want to know how this ends up.
Turn off the video. Turn off the video. That's what I want.
I'm sure she's going to recover immediately as soon as I finish this next
Okay,
question.
Caroline, you froze. Turn off your video, Caroline, because I think your audio will work if you turn off your video.
Okay, so I don't have to smile anymore. Great. So I started talking about sales. I don't know how far I got, but basically just that, under those circumstances where you have long lines of people are angry, they bought something that they want to return and they did it past their date, like having to deal with these situations with grace. Those are skills that are going to come in really handy at law firms because you should be prepared for 20 of your 60 interviewers in one day to cancel on you and having to scramble to find people to replace. So being able to just kind of compartmentalize and say, that sucks. Moving on. How am I going to fix this? Focus on the solution instead of the problem. So I think sales is a really great place, but it could come from anywhere, right? Anywhere where you learn some resilience, where you learn to deal with people, where you have to pay attention to detail, like all of those things can come from any job, right? If you do a job well, there are things that you're going to be able to bring from that job that are going to serve you well in this or any capacity. So I don't think you have to be limited in where you come from to succeed in this profession. You asked what skills are better suited toward career in law school recruiting versus lateral recruiting. I think, I have to say when I was at Columbia, I loved being able to wear jeans.
Oh, internet gods are not smiling upon poor Caroline.
I think she's going to say casual. She said she was casual at Columbia. I think that's what casual dress code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know she'll come back, and I look forward to hearing what her finish that topic. But I sort of wanted to bounce around to all of you. Let's say people are now excited to get into this industry. What should someone expect when entering legal recruiting for the first time, or what currently excites you about the industry, your position?
I would say, be prepared for every day to be different, especially we've talked a lot about the law student recruiting side, especially during those seasons. There is so much going on, and you have to be prepared for the unexpected. I know Caroline already alluded to that. And we're dealing with a lot of type A, highly motivated, very competitive attorneys. And so that client service piece really comes into play when you can be their go-to, build those relationships too, because those are the doors you'll go and knock on when you need an interviewer to fill in. But yeah, I would just say be prepared for the unexpected. New things always come up in this job, but that's not a scary thing. I think that can be really exciting and makes your job, it makes every day fun to see what you're going to walk into.
I can say that what I, at this point in my career, what I find really gratifying is that I can help other people in this and advance in their career. I'm co-chair of the NALP Asian American group, and one person, I introduced them, they're relocating to another part of the country, and I introduced to someone that can open up opportunities to them in their relocation. And she was so thankful that I could do that. And I was like, that was easy for me, but I just love being able to help someone with that. Or and I think that's really what I enjoy right now. And like Brittany said, that there is change going on in this and in this industry, and it's kind of exciting to be part of it and see how it changes. But then I think that but to be honest with you, it doesn't change as fast as other industries. But and another thing too, I think that you work with really smart, intelligent people, highly intelligent people, and don't be intimidated by that, because I think it's actually really interesting when you peel the layers and you realize that they're just like us, you know. Ramiel, do you have anything to add to this?
I definitely think it depends on what time of the year you join. Joining in the summer is very different from joining in the winter, with the summer program and all. But I think you can expect, similar to what Brittany said, every day is different. It's very fast paced, and there's a lot of learning, but a lot of connections to be made. It's a very niche community, and people are knowledgeable and have your back. So I have connections that far reach past scatting at different firms, and I can't think of another industry in which that was a thing. So there's a sense of community in here that does not go unnoticed, that I definitely appreciate.
Yeah, and for me, I think just kind of thinking back to when I started, I mean, obviously, I'm definitely going to piggyback on the idea that you've got to be able to pivot. Things are constantly changing. You've got to be able to adapt. But it was a surprisingly steep learning curve. Even I was a lawyer, and obviously went to law school, and there is a steep learning curve, and I think that's pretty exciting because it's very challenging. In law schools, the teams that focus on recruiting are typically quite small. So our office has, I think, 16 people, but only 2 of us have roles that are focused on recruiting. So when you come on board, you have the opportunity to really hit the ground running and do meaningful work pretty quickly.
Araby,
So
can I also
I
add,
don't know
or Caroline?
I don't know if I'm going to cut out, but I'll try starting. I was going to say, I think what's really exciting, well, first, I agree with, well, all of you, but the steep learning curve is huge if you're not from legal. But I was going to say that what's really exciting is I think recruiters have the most important job in law firms because law firms don't create things, right? Like it's all about the intellectual property. Like it's our people. That's the asset of law firms. And we are responsible for bringing these people in. Without us, the firm cannot exist. So I think we have the most important role in law firms. And as the people who are kind of the gatekeepers, like we have the opportunity to really help shape the culture of the firm. And to me, that is super exciting. Like you have an outsized impact in this job that I think is really special.
And Araby, what I wanted to add is that I think the benefits of working in legal, whether it be on the school side or the firm side, because like I think working in the schools can be rewarding too, because some schools offer great benefits. Like some systems that have a pension, or they will pay for your kids to go to school, and then on the law firm side, like I so yeah, I think we have great medical, dental, health coverage, and there's different types of like profit sharing and all that. But in addition, like when I compare it to like tech, and especially what tech is going through now, I think in tech, people are more dispensable. Law in legal is you're less dispensable, and even if there is a reduction in force at a firm, because you're already in the industry, and as Ramiel just said about community, if you're networked, you will have opportunity in legal. And that's like one of the things that I think people need to really understand is networking. Of course, we hate that word because it sounds so icky, but I think that being networked where people are emotionally invested in you and they want to help you out, that is going to advance your career.
I do want to add one thing that excites me about this industry. I haven't been in it long enough to really see the full cycle, but the timeline and the attorney timeline. So when you first identify them as 1Ls, you extend an invite for them to come in as a 1L summer, then they get an opportunity to return and then they eventually get an opportunity to become a junior associate, and then they climb up the ladder. My tenure hasn't been long enough, but I can imagine how rewarding that is to just be able to say that you made contact with someone when they were at law school, and then you saw them climb up the attorney ladder, then eventually become counsel and then partner. That must be rewarding in itself. That's one thing that I look forward to enjoying in this industry.
Great. What would you guys say are next steps or tips for the audience who are interested in pursuing this career? Brittany, I'll start with you.
Michael already touched on this a little bit, but networking, I know it sounds very basic, and like he said, like we don't mean it as like a bad word, but connect with people that are in the roles that you would want to be in, or connect with positions like ours. I mean, I know I speak for myself. Hopefully I'm not over promising from my other panelists here, but you know, connect with us on LinkedIn, ask questions. I've found that members of this LAALRA community are always willing to answer questions and to connect with you and help give guidance. It's been a really rewarding community to be a part of, and I've just seen how those connections have helped other people find roles. And if you might, like, if I might not have a job to hire for right now, but I know other firms are hiring in those coordinator and assistant roles, I can, you know, because we've spoken or we've had a conversation, I can refer you over to them and say, hey, reach out to Michael. He might know of something at his firm. So it really helps to connect. And I had a really good advice from a mentor years ago who always just said, ask the question, because the worst answer you're going to get is no, and you're not going to be any worse off with that no. So reach out to people. It never hurts.
I agree with Brittany on that. And I think one of the resources I think is that the professional network, I start NALP.org. NALP is the national organization that we all belong to. It is basically, it started originally for like law schools and law firm recruiting professionals, but it's expanded to like professional development and DE&I folks. It's a great network, and I consider it like, because I consider recruiting kind of a gateway into other functions at a law firm. Because I know people that have worked in recruiting that have gone on to business development, marketing, office administration. Like there's a whole world that can be before you. And so now, and then like Tommy talked about LAALRA in Los Angeles, like most of the major metro areas have their own city group. And it doesn't hurt to like, hey, connect with, if you have questions, talk to one of us, like, you know, and just say, do you have time? And then we can give you some pointers. I actually did an informational interview with an undergrad student a few weeks ago at the request of one of my partners, because she was thinking about going to law school. And I said, since you're just finishing up your freshman year, would you consider like working at a summer at a law firm in the backside, like working on our summer programs and recruiting, because then you can see how the sausage is made. And she was like, I never thought about that. I was like, well, think about that, and I can flip your resume over to people I know, you know?
That's excellent advice. Oh, sorry, Caroline, did you?
No, I was going to say those are excellent pieces of advice. I'm going to say that I met a candidate years ago who was really interested in breaking in, and she did all the right things. She networked with everybody in New York City. What really impressed me was she actually signed up and went to NALP on her own dime so that she could meet more professionals, attend sessions to learn more about what we did. And that kind of initiative was so impressive to me. I couldn't hire her because I didn't have an opening, but she found a place at a really top law firm, like a Vault 5 firm. And so, you know, having that kind of initiative really helps. So network with people. And if you can afford it, you know, going to something like that was, she made so many connections, and that's where she got her first job.
Great, thank you. And I think for me, this is more, I think, for students or those of you who are earlier on in your careers and trying to figure out what you want to do when you grow up. And I mean that respectfully, because I'm not sure I totally know what I want to do when I grow up. But I'd say don't worry too much about coming up with a definitive answer to that question. Just take it one step at a time. So in other words, even if you don't see legal recruiting as what you want to do for the rest of your life, if you think it might be an interesting next step, explore the option. You would definitely develop skills that are easily transferable to other industries, or maybe you'll decide that in fact, this is the industry that you want to stay in. So you never know, what doors will open when you take that next step, even if that step isn't in a direction that you'd previously considered. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I do see that we have some questions in the chat. So let me just go read it. So it's, how do you get into the recruiting industry after being an attorney if you don't have any experience as a recruiter? This person is a former attorney, 3 years at Skadden, and then switched to legal tech sales. This person is very interested to pivot into attorney recruiting and development, and is wondering what tips you can share to overcome sort of the overqualified yet underexperienced issue during the application process. Are there any particular roles that this person should be aiming for, like coordinator, manager? I think you touched on it a little bit too, but if there are any other resources or professional networks that you can suggest. And then finally, I know it's a lot, it's a great question. What is the best way to start practice interviewing to develop qualifications towards that first role? So I'll leave that up to you experts. What do you think?
I'll start with the associate who wants to transition into recruiting. So I think there are a couple issues that you have to kind of work through. If you have no experience in recruiting, it's going to be hard to go into a higher level position because you can't effectively manage people under you if you don't actually know how to do the stuff. It's hard. And so you might have to take a step back and start as a coordinator. And that's hard on the pocketbook, right? Like we all know how much associates make. And one of the people that I hired a few years ago, many years ago now, I guess, she took that step. She was an associate at a big law firm and then went to a coordinator role. But she knew she was going to do that. So she saved every penny as long as she could so that she could build up a nest egg and then took that role. So I think, like Michael said, sometimes you have to take a step back to get there. And I will say the one thing about how I feel when I see that person is I get a little nervous because that person has a JD, is going to come in, get some experience, and then the minute a manager position opens up, that person is fleeing, right? Because, why not? So there are some law firms that might be leery of hiring someone in those circumstances. You have to convince the person that you're going to stay. That's not going to necessarily be easy.
Or I think it's also finding an organization, a firm that is about a teaching firm. Like one of the things that I'm actually okay is that, like, I asked someone, give me a 2-year commitment though. But if we train you well and you go out and do well, then that means we trained you well. And I want to be supportive of people in this profession, because that's one of the things that like happened in the last recession, that there wasn't a lot of movement. So people, so that's probably the reason why we are doing this session, because we need a pipeline of people. So so what I want to also encourage is, like, learn about, if you want to go in the law firm side for legal recruiting, a law firm is not a law firm, is not a law firm. We're all, like, once you get beyond, like, and you see Brittany and Caroline are nodding their heads, because, like, I'm on my 3rd law firm, and I can tell you, very different from my prior 2 firms. Very different. Caroline, I assume yours is different, right? Brittany, yours different?
Yes.
Ramiel, is Skadden your 2nd firm, right? So would you say different experiences, right?
Very different.
Yeah, very different.
And one of the things that I want to add to the question of what tips do you have to overcome the overqualified yet underexperienced issue during the application process, I think just being really excited about the learning process and respecting the fact that even though you know a ton about what you used to do, you are going into something that you do not know a ton about. And I think one of the things that somebody in a hiring position might be concerned about is that you're not going to be moldable, that you're set in your old ways. You think you know everything, you're not going to want to learn, this new industry that is quite different from what you did. So I think just showing that you are excited to learn, you recognize that this is an entirely different area. While you do have the skills, you totally have the skills to do this, you're excited to get the guidance as to how to implement those skills to the best, to the best of your abilities. So I think that would be one of the things that I could add to. Let's see, the next question is, do you guys have any advice for undergrads or soon-to-be grads looking to get legal experience before law school? Are you hiring students?
Yeah, I think it depends on the need. Like, I actually have someone working in my team right now who's made it very clear to us that she eventually wants to go to law school. And so that was told to us up front. And I was like, okay, that's fine, and as long as, we work out a time frame. And I've actually had I think about my career, a lot of people that worked for me have gone off to law school.
I had a former coordinator who she also made it very clear she was going to law school. She was actually hired right before I started, but I benefited from her hire in our office. But she did the same thing, is made it very clear of like what her timeline was, so we knew what to expect. And she worked really hard and gave, contributed value to her role and committed to her current role. I think that's the other thing, is even if you're going to be moving on, commit to and do the best that you can in your current role. Because again, those contacts, you never know when those are going to come into place. And that former coordinator actually is a 1L and is coming back to our firm because of the work that they did, and they proved themselves to the partners and earned that 1L spot back at our firm. So you never know where that can lead.
And there's one more question. I know we're a little over time, but I think this is a great question that you guys can answer. For the people who are kind of swinging between introverted and extroverted, people sometimes feel, or this person says that they sometimes feel that others always have something to say when they're mingling with partners, and that partners can be intimidating and therefore they freeze up, which is totally understandable. What advice do you have on dealing with partners as opposed to associates?
They're people too. Don't be intimidated by their title. Don't be intimidated by their JD. And I think that, I think that Caroline's a JD. Like, I think when people are shocked when I tell them I don't have a JD, and they're like, and like, I don't, like Caroline said, you don't need a JD to do this job. And don't let that affect your sense of self, is what I have to say, because you're just as good. And I think that law firms are moving in that direction, that they're trying to not hold that against people. Like I see a difference from 20 years ago when I first started.
And I would say to that, just like Michael said, they're people too. And be proud of like where you've gotten, be proud of what you've accomplished. You're not comparing yourself to the things they've necessarily done. Show confidence. You have a lot to be confident about. And so don't be intimidated. There's nothing to be intimidated.
Yeah.
This is a person who's been in your position, who has worked hard and worked their way up the ranks.
Many attorneys will ask you like what you like. In my current firm, it's funny. It's like their partners will ask like what we think about this certain candidacy. Like a partner, like they'll ask, "What do you guys think?" And we're like, "You're asking me what I think, but okay, here." And you'll be surprised. Don't doubt the value that you can bring to the table.
100%.
If you aren't sure what to say, like, connect with them on a personal level. Ask them about if they have a family, or their pathway into their practice. Did they go on a vacation recently? Like little questions like that you would ask any other person that you work with. And you'll find that they open up and enjoy talking about their personal lives too.
Partners love talking about themselves. So just ask questions about them and you'll be fine.
Isn't that all attorneys?
It's funny that Caroline brings that up. Sorry, but an important skill we didn't talk about is listening. And the reason why is because Caroline just hit the nail on the head. When you're interviewing candidates, everyone's favorite subject should be themselves. And then they'll disclose a lot about themselves. And listening is so important. And yeah, we didn't mention, I'm ashamed that we didn't even talk about that. So important.
And I promise you, if you ask them a lot of questions, they're going to walk away from that conversation and say, wow, she's really great.
So
that was
true.
A great conversation.
So true. 100%, Caroline. That's so true.
Well, that's our time. I want to thank our panelists very much for sharing your insights. And of course, a big thank you to everybody who's in the audience. I really appreciate, we really appreciate your joining us. I hope you found this informative. Please feel free to reach out to us with questions. I think we're going to put our emails in the chat. And if we also do have this a job newsletter. So if you want to reach out to Janice Yee, I think she can put her email in the chat. We can add you to our distribution list for our newsletter. And that's it. So if you guys could put your stuff in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, very much for joining us. Appreciate it.